to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. Are you a goofball that loves Giants football? If so, sit back and relax as we talk about the team that both excites and frustrates us so much. And now, here are your goofball hosts, Drew and Rob.
Welcome, fellow goofballs, to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. I am Drew, joined as always by...
And me, Rob. Let's talk about some 440 dashes.
We got all kinds of fun with that. Let me ask you this. For a plate of chicken wings, could you perhaps...
For a plate of chicken wings.
Yes.
I'd definitely run like a 5. Yeah. As long as you start from the 35, but we'll get to that later.
I never thought I would say this, but I really do want to see Brian Dable do the 40 now.
I want to see him against Malik Neighbors.
Oh God, no!
Where they
like, I think Neighbors could probably do a mile at the time it takes him to do a 40.
At least a 400.
Yeah. Unless that chicken wings is there, he might beat him then. All right, let's get into everything going on there. Obviously, last night we had the Hard Knocks episode 2 coming out there, so got to go over everything going on there with that. So a lot of stuff went down. I think the first episode was kind of a people are going to watch it no matter what. Let's just throw a bunch of hoopla together. Nothing too big, nothing too major. Maybe one or two things to put on the trailer, and that's it. That's kind of what it was. It was it was kind of like when you bring back a movie franchise, like when Disney brought back Star Wars. The first one, the plot and all didn't matter. People were going to watch no matter what. But going forward, you had to keep them entertained. The nostalgia, the fact they're going to watch just because they're Giant fans was no longer there.
Are you not entertained?
Are you not
entertained?
So this one they definitely brought back. I wouldn't say the big guns. Like, I think there's still a lot of big stuff that we haven't seen or fully learned about yet here. But there was definitely a lot of interesting things in here. This was definitely a more action-packed episode than the first episode. That's for damn sure. If you like giraffe talk, like those of you guys who watch us on a regular basis know that we are people that breathe the draft at that point. There was a lot of draft stuff, guys. Most of this episode centered around the combine. So let's buckle down and get into it here. So we got to start off with a guy who wasn't really talked about at all during that first episode. And it was a big part of our offseason, at least especially the beginning. And that was Xavier McKinney. And all of a sudden, like, the whole episode starts off with Xavier McKinney talk at that point. So they started the episode off with Joe Schoen getting the email about the new cap number from the league. And obviously the cap number much higher than expected. Definitely something they were excited about, which to me,
we knew it was happening.
It's also, to me, always a little overblown because it's not like the Giants got extra money. Everybody got extra money.
Yeah.
So it's like, you still were competing against people that got a lot of money too as well. Like, it didn't really help as much as people made it seem. It may have helped some really cap-strapped teams, perhaps, more than it helped, people
like
that
the Giants.
The Giants had a healthy cap number this year, I felt like. Wasn't like $100 million like some teams did, but we had some money to make some moves.
Healthy for what we've had.
Exactly. Listen,
doesn't mean it's healthy, but
after having the cap space of the New Orleans Saints with the talent level of the Little Giants, okay, this seemed like a very big win.
Yes.
Okay.
You're not wrong for that.
But yeah, the second that he talked about it, started talking about the new cap number, the first thing he brought us up is maybe we have a chance to keep Xavier McKinney after all. They had another section in there where Jerome Henderson is brought in during the combine when the coaches are talking there in the luxury box during a scene when we were talking about him. And the staff talked about giving him an offer, but saying basically, hey, maybe off the table next week kind of scenario. One of those like false sense of urgencies for those people that are in sales understand what that means. A false sense of urgency. You got to give them the the fear of missing out there and all.
Yeah.
It's like that's exactly what they were doing. We're going to find out more as the Xavier McKinney stuff comes out, but I think it was pretty obvious in the watching the show and watching how things have played out this offseason, obviously, that the Giants it wasn't just running back. They had a cap number 4. I don't think they wanted to spend huge on a safety because of the needs they had. They wanted to fix the lines, and that's both. They wanted another pass rusher, another dominant defensive line kind of guy, and they wanted to try to fix this offensive line. And I think in their eyes, it came down to, do we keep Saquon Barkley? I'm sorry, do we keep Saquon and Barkley? Do we keep Saquon and Xavier McKinney, or do we try to beef up these lines? And I think they felt like they couldn't do both. And I think they didn't really care about losing Barkley, but I think McKinney hurt them. I do think they wanted to keep McKinney, but they didn't want to pay him what he was going to get paid in the open market.
Correct. I think when it comes down to, 3 big numbers, obviously you're keeping DJ, right? He's guaranteed money. He's got to play this year.
Yeah, keeping him in a year.
Yeah. The 2 other ones, so it's said 3 big money.
Yeah.
Because that's what you talk about, that's what you got to go through. So the next 2, you're talking about McKinney, you're talking about Barkley, right? So I think Shane, and we'll allude to that a little later, is like, he may feel a little bit of hurt about, the offer they put out last year, and just kind of like seemed like Barkley was upset about it. But we'll get to that later. But you got McKinney. You got this young guy, finished 4th in the league, and at his position in PDF last season. Didn't miss a game. Played fantastic. Obviously, finished 4th.
Yeah. Oh yeah, PFF loved him.
He's also like a locker room hero. Everyone loves him. Everyone around him, regardless. Yeah. They do whatever he says. Just come back with all your fingers after 4th of July.
Yeah. Also,
but
except his hairstyle. I'll never understand the half blonde, half not blonde thing, but whatever.
Whatever this, these dumb whippersnappers.
Stupid.
When you had hair, you look like Dane Cook in that 2000.
What are you talking about here? Did you just mention my baldness? Wow. The hat hides it well.
I'm just saying, like, McKinney, right? Like, if he wasn't getting paid what he got paid by Green Bay.
Yeah.
And if he would have got like just a few mil less, they probably would have thought about keeping him. But at the same time, just like you alluded to earlier, like, you can't pay your quarterback $40 million. You can't pay your
there's a
safety $19 million, and you can't pay your running back another $15 million. Like, that's just too much money. You're looking at 45, 65, and $84 million. Like,
the vibe I got, especially that beginning opening scene, was kind of like the Giants went into this offseason expecting to lose McKinney. And when the cap number went up higher than expected, there was a glimmer of hope for them, per se. But it wasn't like, brimming with optimism. It's kind of like, hey, maybe we can pull this off after all.
Yeah.
But he just wasn't high in the totem pole. And again, I get it. And I feel like people, like Giant fans, NFL enthusiasts, whatever category people are in that are, following those situations, they looked at the Barkley situation and kind of went, you know what? Positional value, I get it. No one said that really too much with McKinney. Like, it's a safety position. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to disrespect the man. He's a great safety in the NFL. He's kind of like that B tier guy. He's still not an A tier. He's not, all pro. He's not that kind of guy. He could develop into him still, depending on, what happens the rest of his career. But he's not one of those guys now. But he's a B tier kind of safety. And in the end, you can't break the bank for a B tier safety. That's not good money making at that point. Good money spending at that point. It's a bad value pick to do at that point. Now, if you think he's the guy who's going to put you over the edge to potentially make a large playoff run or a Super Bowl or something like that, then yeah, by all means. And that's what Green Bay did. But for a team like the Giants, you have only so much money left to spend. You have had a team that has not drafted well for a decade. You have a lot of holes, a lot of issues. You didn't have the money to do it. And honestly, I think that's what it was. It was kind of like, it's kind of like they were at the store. They were at the grocery store. And Joe Shane needed diapers and formula for Daniel Jones, and he couldn't get him the shiny new toy he wanted to get as well. You know, like he had to pick the essentials and not get the extras and take that out of the cart.
I guess.
You know, but I'm saying that's what it feels like. He's like that, you know, he's on a budget at the ShopRite or, you know, Publix, depending what part of the country you're in, whatever at that point, you know, like he's chopping the can sale here, okay? And he's got the important stuff, you know, the line Daniel Jones needs. He's got, you know, he's gonna get the weapon he needs at that point. He's gonna go ahead and get you know, the running back that he can afford to get. He's going to go ahead and get a pass rusher to help the defense. But a safety is kind of an extra. And he doesn't have the money for extras. And that's where I felt like he was at. Like, he really wanted that extra. I just realized we're calling it extra for Xavier McKinney here.
Extra. X going to give to you.
But that's what he wanted. Like I said, that I don't think there was not a doubt in my mind watching the show that he wanted to keep Xavier McKinney. I don't think he cared less if he lost Saquon. You know, but if there was no cap, he probably would have wanted to keep both. Let's be honest. But
okay.
Given the cap situation, he was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to pay a ton of money for a 27-year-old running back, but this young safety who's proven himself in this league, I'd love to keep him. But we have other needs, and they're more important. Got to put this on the back burner and see if we can make it happen when we're done here." That's basically the vibe I got, and it's fair. Yeah. It's the right move, I think. So,
which makes sense. You got to prioritize, like, you know, positional value. Like, and we've talked about that earlier. Like, you got you got great trenches. The guys you have behind the trenches, like, they don't have to be so great. Like, they still need. I mean, still nice to have great, but
like no one's gonna say, oh, why would you get an All-Pro or you know, a Pro Bowl caliber safety, or, you know, a guy who could potentially be one in this case, you know, like, but no one's going to say, why would you, no one's going to, you know, complain when you get one. But if you break the bank for one when you have other needs, they may.
Correct. Like,
and that's where we're in. So,
yeah, 100%. Like, you need to dig your lines. You need to stand those lines, and
that's
then you need to defend. Yep, and you got to defend the lines after that. So that's 100% what they did.
Good move, I thought, overall. I get the feeling where he was at, and I don't disagree with the mindset he was at there. A guy you wanted to keep, but a guy that you couldn't put as a top priority. And unfortunately, you lost him because of that. So we'll get more into that, I'm sure, as this show progresses, because as of this point, free agency even started really from where they're showing. So, you know, we're definitely getting more into it. But, you know, again, they wanted to keep him. Xavier McKinney wanted to be a Giant. It just couldn't make it work. So let's get into what might have been the most interesting segment that I thought in the whole entire show, which is weird because there was a lot of parts with, you know, talking about, you know, some of the high profile draft guys at the quarterback and wide receiver position. But to me, I really thought this segment where they started going over the combine presser was extremely interesting. Like, it made me go, so we do know now that Shane is full of BS when he talks to the media. Because, like, this thing was so rehearsed, you know.
I wouldn't say so rehearsed, but it was definitely
so rehearsed. It's not even funny. Like, they knew what was going to be asked of them. And granted, like, it's not difficult in Joe Shane's position with what he had going on this offseason to know what questions are going to be asked. How about Saquon? How about McKinney? What about the quarterback situation? Like a 2-year-old could have looked at this situation with this team and expected these questions. Like, but everything was so scripted and figured out with the media team ahead of time. And we know at this point things that he said were wrong and BS. We know it. So, you know, they start with Shane at the podium during the national, with the national media there on the press conference during the combine. Then they cut 2 hours earlier to that meeting where he's talking out of the media guys and going, well, if I say this, if I say that, you know, that kind of scenario. Joe Shane mentions the fact that Schefter's reporting about Saquon and says that he will continue to say all options are on the table, including the franchise. But keep in mind, guys, we just learned the last episode. It's not on the table. Joe Shane had no intention of franchising it whatsoever. So with Saquon, what Joe Shane just said is, hey, we're going to bullshit about Saquon. That's basically what he said. Like, we're going to see if Saquon calls our bluff, and we're going to use this option to throw that out there and say, hey, we might still franchise him. Because it was pretty obvious Saquon did not want to get franchised again. And I think that was a move to see if they can try to push the envelope there and speed some things along. Because he knew, and they didn't show it in this episode, but maybe they'll show it next week, who knows. But it was widely known that Joe Schoen was going to talk to Saquon and his people at the Combine. Like, it was reported point blank. They haven't talked at all, but they're talking at the Combine. Like, this was knowledge we all knew about. We reported on ourselves. Like, everybody knew about it. So he went right before this meeting and basically just lied to the national media and everybody there. Now, if he thought that gave him a competitive advantage with Saquon, I'm not pissed about it. I'm just, have actual solid proof that you can't trust anything this man says at a podium. That's where
Don't hate the player. Hit the game.
Like I said, I ain't hating it. If he thought it gave him an advantage, then use the media against. Go for it. Just don't expect anybody to believe you now. Because now you submit it publicly, you lie. So, that's what he did.
Pretty much.
Yeah, last week. We will not franchise him. We can't afford it. Next week, everything's on the table. We may franchise him. Bull. You are not franchising. You just said it. We know it now. So, but they practiced talking about Saquon not wanting to get franchised. At one point, Joe Schoen, which to me was the line of the night, I wish he would have said this at the actual presser, but he said that when they were practicing what to say and everything. He said, and this is a quote word for word of what he said, because I paused, rewind this thing a couple of times to get the exact words. He said, I understand he doesn't want to be franchised, and I wanted to give him a lot of money a year ago, and he didn't want that, but there's nothing I can do about that. So I was like, what? I think he kind of laughs it off. I'm not going to say that. They're like, what? Like, you could tell that there's still resentment there,
There is, but I mean, that's also kind of like locker room talk, even though it's not, locker room. But that's kind of like you're talking with your buddies. Talking like a big game, if you will.
Yeah. But it's like, why? But, you're being recorded. Like, he's not stupid. We've talked about the fact that Joe Schoen, when he talks to the media, besides the fact we just talked about the fact he lies, obviously, but we know that.
But he also likes peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Oh, he loves peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But he's very calculated in what he says and what he does. Very calculated. So don't tell me that wasn't a calculated move to send a message to Saquon. I really think that was. I really think that was like, this is what I want to say, but I can't say it, so I'll say it here because this will come out eventually.
Maybe.
And we have no way of knowing for sure. We don't.
Say you
but that's what I think. This is my personal opinion. IMO.
Oh. Ooh.
Oh, yes.
IMO only.
I am HO? No, because I have no humbleness in me. But like I said, there's definitely a resentment there, guys. There's definitely a resentment. And I don't think the relationship between Shane and Barkley and Barkley's people was very good at all. Xavier McKinney topic then comes up again, but talk about how he's more vocal on Twitter. Which you remember, we talked about it. All of a sudden, McKinney was like blasting, like point blank, talking about wanting to go where he's appreciated and blah, blah, blah. Like, he was much more vocal than he ever been in his entire time with the Giants. And but the tone was much more positive when he talked about X than it was about Saquon. It was much more like, you can tell they wanted to keep him again. The quarterback topic was then brought up, and they just basically planned a generic answer and mentioned people reported they wanted to trade up. But it was interesting, they didn't deny that. They didn't confirm it, but they didn't deny it.
No, I mean, they also did their due diligence, and they brought in, all the top, the first round, what everyone thought would be just the first round picks.
Quarterbacks.
Yeah, A tier. Yeah,
the A tier. Not to be confused with A team. I pity the fool. I knew you'd do it. I knew you'd do it.
I didn't do it. I pity the fool that didn't think I was going to do
it. As I wear my Mr. T Giants gear here.
Yeah.
But
as you're rocking your Mr. T mohawk underneath that Giants hat.
It's not a Giants hat. This is actually a Columbia fishing hat. It's a bunch of fishies to make the American flag. It's a Florida staple. You can't help.
American flag or it's fish?
Both.
Ah.
Yeah. But like I said, I just thought it was interesting because they kind of kept that part ambiguous. Like we don't know if they planned on trying to trade up or not. We'll talk more about the trade aspects later on because that did come up again. But we don't know how serious they were, at least as of right now. Maybe that comes out later on in the show. Who knows? But there was definitely concerns about DJ being healthy to start the year. And there was definitely a good amount of time spent looking at quarterback options, including options that at least at pick 6 would probably not be available. So let's get into that there because we got some interesting one-on-one conversations and all they had with the top quarterbacks and receivers in this draft here. So at one point they had a scouting team meeting where they were talking about different cliff notes on the players there. And then they also showed shots of the interview process they had at the combine as well. So instead of doing it in a chronological order, we broke it down into each individual player because it was interesting to look at what they said about the individual player, but it was also mixed up together and stuff. It made it kind of difficult to zone in on each of them at once. So we thought this might be a little more helpful to do it this way. So 100%. We start off with who might have very well been the biggest topic of these prospects, and that's Jaden Daniels, because he got a little beat up last night, guys. He definitely got a little beat up last night. Like, this show was not kind to him at all in any way, shape, or form, basically. So the scouting team meeting, they said about him, 3-time team captain, not a vocal leader, but improved in that category last year. Getting a feel for recall will be important. Now, recall is something that was a very big thing in these combine interviews. So, meaning I throw you a play, you can repeat it back to me that quickly. And keep in mind, a play is not like it is in Madden. Like, we're not like, I form. Like, no, that's not what it is. Like, they're giving you like
all Madden, where you're talking about your X, Y, F, and positions, and you're talking about you're breaking that down your line, moving around, all 4 receivers, and then you switch around and call your audibles on the play. That's what they're doing. It was very, very
it was like no 10 words with 5 letters and numbers randomly thrown into it kind of scenarios, you know?
It seemed like I was taking calculus all over again.
Yeah, and listen, this is why I've always said, like, people like to talk about the physical abilities of a quarterback. They don't talk enough about the mental parts of it. There's a huge mental aspect of this, and it's probably just as important as the physical. You know, some of the best quarterbacks that were winners, the mental aspect was big about them. Even some guys that made it that weren't very athletic, like I'll use Chad Pennington as a great example back in the day. I was a big fan of him when he was playing because he was not the most physically gifted player by any stretch of the imagination, but he was smart, he was gritty, and he got the job done. So anyway, Jaden Daniels is asked to draw up his favorite play on a whiteboard and to be as detailed as possible. They asked him while drawing a route if that was Neighbors, which I thought was interesting. Like, they didn't ask anybody else except Neighbors. And I kind of got the vibe that was thrown in there to kind of give a hint to, like, we may be interviewing him more to find out about Neighbors than actually him.
Yeah, that's how I took that.
Yeah. Like, and I don't know if that's what it was, but it was kind of like they were concerned really where Neighbors was on this play. And being that we drafted Neighbors, obviously, it makes you wonder, were they trying to see what college plays he liked or, you know, what things he did well like that and get the perspective of somebody who played with them like that? I don't know. Because obviously these are edited videos. It's not like they gave us the whole interview. But the fact that made it in there made me think that there was probably some things thrown in specifically to get a feel for Neighbors and Neighbors and Daniels, you know, relationship at that point during this whole process here. Anyway, while he was doing that, Shea Tierney asks him what his favorite route to throw on that play is and where. Daniels is then asked to change the play based on directives that Brian Dable gives him. And he wasn't like slow. He was like, do this, do this, do this, to that, do this, that. He was like it was fast.
Yeah.
It was like think fast, be fast, Chad Power style. Like it was definitely fast. But he's got to have to do that. If you're in the NFL, you're going to have to do that. Like, you think quick on your feet. That's part of the process there. And
Yeah,
it's
listen,
you're going to change a play that quickly in a headset necessarily, but you might if you're on a downswing of a play clock.
no, and it's not just that. It's also when the bodies are moving on the field and you have to call an audible. You can't vocalize how fast those body movements are happening in. And if they want to see if you could call an audible on the field, you need to be able to read that defense the way it sets up. So this way you could call that faster than it gets relayed over your headphones.
Yeah, but I think part of it also is not even just the play calling aspect of you're getting a feel for how quickly he processes things. We've talked about processing a lot with Daniel Jones. Processing is a huge part of being an NFL quarterback. You have to process what's in front of you before the snap. You have to process what's happening during the play itself. And you have a split second not even to do it. And I think that's a lot of what that was there.
100%.
So after that, he's asked to repeat a play that Dable calls, give him a recall. He wasn't able to do it. He messed up. He's then asked if it's cover one on the play that he has on the whiteboard, what do they want him to do? He says, throw a TD. Now, not the worst answer in the world. Obviously, throwing a TD is a good option. But that's not what the Giants were looking for. They're looking for who's the open person, where do you hit him at, that kind of thing. That's what they were looking for. And while throw a TD is a good option if you don't have the right answer, he didn't have the right answer. That was not a good look, I think. And I think people thought it was funny and he was just trying to be humorous. No, he was trying to cover his bucks. He didn't know the answer. That's how I took that 100%. Especially with that kind of nervous smile he gave after he said it.
Yeah.
Daniels also asked how he would handle it if he starts off badly for the first couple weeks. How he would handle that situation. And then mid-answer, he's asked to repeat the play from earlier. And again, he can't do it. I'm not going to sit there and bash a guy over, a 4 or 5 minute segment on a TV show and say he's not going to make it in this NFL. But a guy we got to see twice a year now, guys, at least for the next 4 or 5 years, potentially. A guy that you would think the Giants wouldn't want to tick off. And they just made him look bad on nationally syndicated. Is that the word you would use now?
I guess so. I mean,
TV program that is very popular in the NFL community because let's be honest, guys, there's nothing else going on right now in the NFL world. Like, this is the biggest thing. So you just basically publicly embarrassed him on the largest available stage this time of year. And when you do stuff like that, people don't forget that, especially the good ones. So either the Giants are very confident that he's not that good, or the Giants don't have control as much as people think of the editorial process in this whole thing. But yeah, that's kind of a dangerous move to kind of give this guy locker room kind of, material to throw up when we play them in week 2. And Jane Daniels like, hey, remember this? These are the jackasses that made me look bad on Hard Knocks. Let's throw a touchdown.
Yeah, remember that play you want me to dissect? Here's your touchdown.
Yeah, like it's dangerous. But part of me also wonders, and we talked about it during the draft. Like we said, part of what you got to look at when this whole thing is, was his success, or was it the fact that he had, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, 2 of the top 5 receivers in the draft, also on that team, along with, Brian Kelly as a head coach who's got a history of getting the best out of quarterbacks. So I don't know. I honestly, if I was a Commander fan, I would not like what I saw. As a Giant fan, I love it.
Yeah.
Because we said Jane Daniels was probably the best quarterback in the draft. Obviously, we didn't have the chance to sit down in a 101 and have these kind of conversations. If this had happened before the draft, I don't know what this would have done to our opinion.
The only other thing, and I'm just going to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it. Go for it.
He could just be that, the young guy that doesn't know how to articulate what he sees on the fields, but just knows how to do it when he sees it out there.
Like the Rain Man of quarterbacking.
Could be like, listen, you think Brett Favre came out of college going through, when he's getting drafted and articulated how he throws these different balls? But they highlighted him throwing different slants and understanding like how he threw the ball later in his career. But
I think
it.
Favre learned to be a quarterback under Holmgren. And I don't think that he would have been the same player if he didn't have that tutelage early on. Favre's kind of a weird scenario because he had the physical tools. I don't think he had necessarily the mental tools when he started off. But maybe that's Jaden Daniels too.
He's just Jaden Daniels. I don't think
I'll tell you this: Cliff Kingsbury is not a Mike Holmgren.
No,
he's not.
I'm just devil's advocate. I'm just saying.
I know.
I
don't want to overblow it because it's a 4 or 5 minute segment. Like it'd be a little ridiculous for us to change our entire opinion based on a 4 or 5 minute edited segment.
Correct.
That'd be utterly insane.
It
makes me feel better about the fact that we have to face him twice a year than I did prior to the episode airing.
And once again, playing devil's advocate, maybe Giants do have a lot of editing, and they say, let's make Daniels look like a fool in this scenario, like not thinking about the repercussions about playing him twice a year because they say we got the Commander's number.
Yeah, I would hope they wouldn't be that cocky. With our record the last decade, it's hard to be cocky.
Yeah, I'm just devil's advocate here. Just putting it out there.
Let's talk about the belle of the ball.
Ooh, see my vest,
and that is Drake May, who really came out looking probably the best interviewer of this whole group here at the quarterback spot, at least. The scouting team notes they gave on him said legacy kid, little looser but similar personality to DJ. Mental is going to grade out high. They weren't kidding when they said that. And this is part of why I wanted to put this into like the segments based on the player, because when he came up during the actual interview, I wasn't thinking back to these scout notes. And the key thing here is mental is going to grade out high. Because that's 100% what you saw there. So Drake May is asked to repeat a play, much like they did with Jaden Daniels, but he did it no problem. In fact, he gave, there's a little topic of verbiage that they use being slightly different to what he's used to at that point, but he still had no problem understanding what was going on with the play and repeating it word for word, no issues whatsoever. They talk about basically giving their explanations on the term, and Dable was like, yeah, there you go. Yep, that's it. Like there was all agreement with that kind of stuff.
All he says, like, this is what we call over here. Like, hey, same thing.
Yeah, like there was no issues he had whatsoever with that, recall that he had on that play. Then they end up going a back and forth conversation at this point that just seemed to be a great conversation between two football minds. Listen, Rob and I are goofballs. We are not the guys who sit there and talk about the exact verbiage on football plays and stuff like that. We're the guys who drink a lot of beer and watch a lot of football.
Yeah, it's hard for me to remember all the algorithms of X, Y, F, and C, and who's going to switch over to what and call your audibles, and then talk about your offensive line. Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, we're the guys.
I'll have 11 beers instead of having 11 players on the field.
Like, I'll freely admit it. Like, you could spill off a whole bunch of stuff that sounds fancy and impress us. And that's what happened in this segment. But you could genuinely see that Dable enjoyed that conversation. And you're not going to
see that man smile in 3 years.
Yes. Like, there was a plate of chicken wings in front of him, he acted like.
Yeah.
But, like, you could tell he enjoyed it. And, the rumors were back then that this is who they wanted in this draft was Drake May. They didn't think they'd have a chance at, in hell of getting Caleb Williams. So that was kind of thrown out immediately. But Drake May was the guy they supposedly had wanted, according to all the rumors. And you can see why after this interview. But I will remind people that is part of it. And not everybody that has a great interview is going to be a great player automatically. Because I think, at least from what I'm seeing in Giants land and Giants Twitter and social media and all, people are like, oh my God, this kid's going to be so good. Look at this. No, there are plenty of people who are extremely smart and very good at football knowledge, football terms, football reading plays at that point, the different aspects like that, and don't necessarily translate on the field. There are guys who become coaches that were backup quarterbacks their whole life. You don't think those guys could have that kind of impressive interview?
100%. You alluded to Chad Pennington before.
Yeah.
Dude blew out interviews. Seemed like he had so much talent, which, he did, but was it NFL talent?
Didn't have the arm strength.
No, not at all. It was a bomb to him was 22 yards.
It's like a pool noodle.
Does that make it an NFL? No. But his football IQ was some of the best out there.
Yep.
So, a guy like that going to a coaching staff, he becomes one of the best coaches in the NFL. It could be, possibly. Let's talk about some of these coaches out there. How great were they at football? Because obviously they had a football career to give them a staff.
And that's not to say Drake May won't make it either. It's just same as we talked about with Jaden Daniels. I don't want us to change our entire opinion on a 4 or 5 minute edited segment. That would be ridiculous. I still think Drake May has some potential, but I still think he's got an upward battle because of the situation he's coming from at UNC. He didn't face the top, teams at that point. We've talked about some of the ridiculous teams he faced, and he didn't blow it out of the water. So could he be something this week? He's got a good mind, obviously. We now know that for sure. But he's still the same player he was when we evaluated him back in, February, March at that point. So we'll see. It just solidifies why he was so liked at that point there by Dable and all. But there's still more to the equation than just the meetings. Next guy up, J.J. McCarthy, which was the guy that was the rumor that the Giants wanted this guy and we can get him kind of situation. Drake May was the pipe dream. J.J. McCarthy was the obtainable dream. That's the way it was being kind of thrown out there to all of us during the rumor session. It's kind of Drake May was the hot girl. J.J. McCarthy was the best friend that was nearby to fall back to.
But not the Duff.
So, they really didn't give too much on J.J. McCarthy in this. And honestly, I came across this going, yeah, that whole thing was a goddamn smokescreen.
Yep.
Goddamn exactly smokescreen. Now, we did say that on the show multiple times, by the way. So, again, I like the fact that we were, our opinions were validated. Because as much as we said before that we're not the people that sit there and can give you every single complicated term in the football play and stuff like that, that's just not what we are. If there's one thing Rob and I are very good at, it's reading body language. It's picking up on small cues and talks.
And calling out BS.
Yeah, we've both been in sales for so many years that we could see things that I'm not saying no one else can see. I'm not that conceited. Not in public, at least. But But when you worked in sales for enough years, you learn to pick up things at that point. You can pick up little micro expressions and stuff like that. If you ever watched the show Lie to Me back in the day, you could pick up that kind of stuff and you kind of learn to automatically, whether it's pauses, tone, little motions at that point, eye twitches, little, movements at the corner of the mouth. There's things you just get trained to pick up on. And to me, the whole thing seemed like BS, just the way the whole conversations were going there. The notes they gave on this from the scouting team meeting, JJ just turned 21 years old, young kid. The O-line had the responsibility for making points at the run, They call it protections, but he could override them. But the way they were talking, they definitely seemed concerned, like he wasn't calling the whole play. Like he wasn't the guy that was just going to the line and making those decisions. And yeah, that's something, a valid concern. And I don't think that got talked enough during the actual draft time, to be honest with you, but yeah, that's a concern. Like they didn't even trust you to call the plays fully. Like they trusted granted, they had a good veteran line. It's not like they had like scrubs there. That was really the star of the show, was that offensive line. But it's like
what they took away from it and what they said, it's something that I took away is like you didn't give him experience in college.
Yeah.
And you want him to go to the NFL to have that experience. But you didn't give him the training wheels to get that experience to go to.
Yes.
They didn't say that verbatim, but that's what I took away from saying.
Like, vibe. Exactly.
Yeah.
So like we don't know if he can do this because he didn't do it before.
Correct.
So
he's done it, here and there, but that's what it is, here and there. It's like a flip of a coin. Not even a flip of a coin. It's like majority of the time was based on the offensive line. So it's like, how can you trust a guy in the NFL to be the leader of the team when his line did the dirty work for him majority of the time?
Yeah. Yeah. It just seems a little crazy, but I guess you can't change it. Like that wasn't his decision, obviously, but it definitely hurt him, I think, in this draft. And then the only time they really showed him during the interview was JJ McCarthy seen running a play in the board that the Giants basically said was way too long. And it was way too long. But yeah, I mean, that's it. There wasn't a lot. And I got to think if the Giants were really interested in JJ McCarthy, they would have given a lot of more information on him during this than they did. The only other thing I could think of is that the Giants try to downplay so people have this opinion. So they can say, oh, we love Daniel Jones. We never wanted J.J. McCarthy. We love Daniel Jones.
Could be.
But I don't think that's it. Like I said, we said from the get-go this was a smokescreen. I still think that. It's just everything is telling me that. The way these scouts talked about him is something I could not get out of my head. Like they were kind of like, yeah, he kind of had training wheels on when he was supposed to learn to ride a bike by now.
Yeah.
That's basically what the analogy was they gave. They didn't say it that way. I'm not trying to put words in their mouth. But that's
why I said it.
But it's basically what it is. So, it's kind of like you're a little too old to be in pull-ups at this point. Like you take the diaper off, move on. We made too many analogies to kids in the show.
It's supposed to say, no one wants to crap the pants.
Yes. Except Amber Heard.
No, that's the bed.
She shit the bed. Let's get into the guy who was the biggest name in this entire draft here. And that's Caleb Williams, who also, based on the picture we're using, has the largest hand or wants somebody not to talk to him. They have to talk to the hand. But
talk to the hand, the face of one listen.
Now, during the scouting team meeting, the notes they had is transfer from Oklahoma. 22 had the big season Heisman, a lot of success. USC started 6-0 this year, but ended up losing five of their last 6 games. How did he deal with that adversity? He refused to speak to the media after UCLA loss, and that they said point blank that's a no-no in the Giants market. But they also said he's a competitor and loves the ball. We talked about some of the mental toughness with Caleb Williams a lot during this draft. If you could take the emotional part of it out of him, he'd be an amazing prospect. And he still is a high-level prospect, obviously. But that's a huge flaw for me when you're scouting specifically for the New York Giants.
Correct.
The New York media market is part of that equation. There are a lot of the teams out there, some of the best guys that have had success here in New York have said that point blank. Like, I need to know this guy can handle New York. Not everyone can. I used the analogy before, and I'll always use it probably to the day I die, of Randy Johnson when he came to play for the Yankees. This is a guy who succeeded in Seattle, succeeded in Arizona, like one of the best lefty pitchers of his generation, if not the best, depending where you want to put him in, like Tom Glavine. But you look at what he did in his career. I mean, the man, struck people out on a regular basis, had perfect game, killed a pigeon. I mean, like he did all kinds of amazing things. I'll never forget the pigeon. like a bird went across while he was pitching and it literally hit him.
Yeah. No, he just didn't kill the pigeon. He just sent it to another dimension.
It was crazy. Puff of feathers. But it's like he went to.
What's what happens when you throw a 108-mile fastball into a bird?
He went to New York. He could not handle it. Like he was getting into arguments with media people on the streets of the city. Like he could not handle it. It's not for everybody. And I think that's what they were kind of alluding to, is that we're going to talk to him. We're going to see what we got here, but this might not be the right place for him. And the fact that he ended up going to Chicago still makes me worried for him.
Yeah.
If you went to a small market, he'd been a much better shot. If I was him, I would have tried to avoid Chicago as best I can. I would have also tried to avoid New England. That's part of the problem. And Washington. It's like all these big market teams were the first ones to take a crack at him at that point there. It's like, where are you going? Unless you went to Minnesota, don't you know?
I say you had to go to Minnesota. Oh God.
The combine interview notes they gave, I had here. I mean, Caleb Williams was asked to draw up a play that if there was just one play he had to run anytime he wanted to pass the ball, it'd be that play. But I'll tell you, dude, it was just me, or you watch that. Caleb Williams looked like the guy who was forced to show up to a birthday party that did not want to be there. Like, that's the vibe I got from him 100%. And, there's a lot of talk about him in this draft being entitled, being a guy who didn't come off well personally with some of these teams. He came off to me, and again, this is all body language. It's nothing he said. This is all speculation. But he came off like a guy who just did not want to be there. He was like Marshawn Lynching it. He was just there so he didn't get fined. And I don't know what the rules are about getting fined, but it's like, as far as combine interviews, I'm sure you could probably
just do. He definitely had a bag of Skittles in his back pocket.
But that's the thing is, like, I can't imagine there is a fine if they don't go to the interviews. I think everything is voluntary 100%. They don't technically work for the NFL at this point. So, like, why even show up if you don't want to be there? I mean, Deion Sanders was notorious for the fact that he did this. And was it, correct me if I'm wrong, was it 89 he was drafted, I want to say? I think we're taking it back to the 80s now.
Something like that. I mean, it was
81, 89, 91, whatever at that point. Like, it was right into that turn of that decade. I'm going to look it up here real quick. But, 89, it was 89. He famously refused to go into meetings with different teams that he didn't think had a shot of drafting him. And if I remember right, the Giants were one of those teams, actually. And people are like, hey, they want to meet with you. And like, why? They're not going to have a chance to get me. I'll be long gone before they get. It's just like, I'm not dealing with this. Point blank. Which is kind of a backwards way to do it, because trades happen and things do happen and people can move up and come get players they want. But that's kind of the vibe I got from Caleb Williams. Like, I don't know why I'm even here. Like, you guys have no shot of getting me. But if that's the case, then why show up?
Yeah.
Don't show up then. If you're not in it to be there, then don't show up. Because I can't imagine if we picked up on that. And I know I'm not the only one who said that. Like, I'm not trying to make myself seem like I'm the smartest person in the room and I'm the only one who thought that. If I picked up on that, isn't it reasonable to assume that the Giants also picked up on that?
Yeah, the guys that were in the room?
Yeah. So, like, you don't think they were like, they left that thing going, well, he came off like a dick. Like, why would I want him? He doesn't want to be at this meeting, let alone.
Yeah.
Like, who knows? Maybe
5 years.
Offer something crazy to the Bears and say, listen, we'll give you 5 first-round picks. We really want this guy. Like, we think he's the next Peyton Manning. Like, if you thought of that as a possible scenario, you sure as hell didn't after that meeting. Like, God forbid Caleb Williams slid at all. He would have been the guy to keep on sliding, perhaps, because he just would have been pissed everybody. I don't get it. I really don't. I really don't get that whole thing. Let's get into the receivers, though, because that's, I think, partly a more interesting topic here because of the fact that's the position we took. So we start off with the big name here, Marvin Harrison Jr., who, of course, is the son of Marvin Harrison Sr. I don't know why I went with that out, but it's just in case you couldn't put two and two together. The notes on him from the scouting team meeting was outstanding football character. And they mentioned, obviously, again, that Senior is his dad. They said no ego, elite level worker, cool, calm, collective, great personality. And I got to say, the vibe that I got from that interview they had with him was just that too as well.
Let's say 100%. That's what I felt like.
Yeah, like that back. I got to say, I don't, again, these are edited. They're 100% edited. We know this. But I got to say, what they said in these meetings was on point with what you saw in the interview process. And it makes you wonder, was it edited to look that way? Or is the scouting team that on point? I don't know whether to give them a kudos for it or if this is like edited to look that way. You know what I mean? I really don't know. For all we know, that scene was shot after the meetings. We don't know.
I doubt it.
I wouldn't put it past anybody to do anything like that. This is the way reality TV works. It's not that real. But yeah, Marvin Harrison is then asked how to deal with a young quarterback who makes a mistake and what he says to a young quarterback when they do that. They showed him a play where the ball wasn't quite thrown correctly to him at that point. He said he doesn't say anything to the QB. He's then talked about the play that they showed him again, and it was told the exact words they used. It was a shit play. And Harrison says he still could have made the play. Like he did everything, and it didn't seem like BS. It didn't seem rehearsed. It didn't seem like that legit was what he thought. He came off as a very impressive person, honestly, in that, so kind of feel bad he went to Arizona.
Yeah, but I mean,
it happens. We all go to Arizona. Nobody wants to stay there. It's way too hot. Way too hot. They spray for scorpions. I'm done. I know you got family out there, so you probably hear about this.
That's my dad. He loves it out there, so kudos to him.
Yeah. I can't be anywhere and this is me living in alligator land. I can't be anywhere they spray for scorpions. Like an alligator is not going to slip into your bed. You're not going to see it. A scorpion can.
I mean, you never know. You think you're going to bed with your wife, but it could be an alligator. So be careful, Drew.
No, she just acts like one if I anger her. Anyway, like I said, I really was impressed with Marvin Harrison Jr. in that process there. Again, it was a very small.
He was impressive. Yeah.
But I thought he came off as a genuinely nice person that, was like, hey, this is what I got to do. I'm a leader of the team. This is what I have to do. In fact, I would have said it was the best interview I saw in this whole thing, if not for the next guy, who really I thought was really impressive as an interview process. He was definitely number 3 to me in the wide receivers. We talked about that leading up to the draft, but his interview to me was as genuine as you get, and that's Jerome Henderson, who when they had talked about him in the scouting room there, they said alpha, high energy guy, can take over a room, smart, tough, dependable, everything you want. That's what they said. And that's exactly what I got from that meeting they had with him. Jerome Henderson's asked what his best trait is, and he says it's the versatility. He can move anywhere you want on the field, which I think is going to come in handy, being that he went to Chicago and he's going to play behind 2 veteran, receivers that are very well, thought of in this league. He's going to be the number 3 receiver. He's going to have to move around, barring
with the rookie quarterback.
So he is asked why they should draft him. He says his energy, and I'm paraphrasing what he said. I kind of wish, as we're talking about here, I wrote down the exact words he used, because his energy wasn't. I don't think energy is the right way. I think it's passion. Like you could tell this
Devotion.
Guy wanted to be the guy who sets the tone for the locker room. That's the vibe I got out of him. Like he wants to be that guy, and I actually think, as much as I don't like the fact that he's a 3rd receiver on this team for his rookie season with Chicago, I think pairing him with Caleb Williams, who we just talked about before, like I think he's got a little prima donna in him at that point there, personality-wise. I think he's got some traits I don't like necessarily personality-wise. Jerome Henderson could end up being the leader of that team. And if he does, it's a very good thing for Chicago. Like a very good thing for Chicago. Like I said, I thought it was extremely genuine, his response. I think it was, a very good meeting he had. Dable even called him an impressive young man. Yeah. Dable does not give kind words very often. That is not his style. unless it's kind words to a plate of chicken wings.
You look so beautiful.
Is that hot sauce, or are you just happy to see me? But yeah,
Nice
it's like
kibasi.
the man just lost a ton of weight this past year too. We're like calling him fat, basically.
He called himself fat. We'll get into that later.
It's okay, yeah. But yeah, like I said, I really thought it was kind of a big thing there. He was the only one of the big three receivers also that actually worked out at the combine. Shane had mentioned he really wanted to focus on a Doomsday at the combine because of that. And I remember him really impressing during the combine as well. Like that was one of the big notes and takeaway from it is how good he looked. Obviously, when you don't have the big names to compare him against, he's going to look good, but still. He's still beat out guys like, aforementioned Brian Thomas, we talked about from LSU. Xavier Worthy, we know all about him, obviously, what he did at the combine. We'll talk about him a little later, too. But again, I thought it was an impressive meeting, and he generally seemed like a pretty impressive guy. Both the first two receivers, him and Harrison, both did. So let's get into option number 3, who we took. And that's Malik Neighbors, of course. There he is in that giant uniform already catching the ball. Before even the regular season, he's already catching the ball. But yeah, he the notes on him was highly passionate and competitive, loves football, will train hard, plays with a big chip. And yeah, I mean, that's, again, from everything we've known of him now as a New York Giant now the last few months, it's pretty accurate. That's definitely pretty accurate there. Oh, we lost Rob. I wasn't sure if we lost Rob or he just kind of was sitting still there for a minute. He'll be back in a minute, I'm sure. But yeah, Dable had said in the interview room before they talked to him, he said he's been watching tape all day of Neighbors and that he was a baller. They mentioned briefly, question it was a Neighbors and then they kind of stopped themselves. So I don't know if they meant Jaden Daniels. I don't know if they meant Thomas. There's a couple other people, obviously, you can watch on the film of LSU games. But yeah, you could tell that Dable was excited to have this process to talk to Neighbors, get to know Neighbors. They really kind of gave it the vibe of that this was the guy the Giants really wanted of these receivers. I don't know if that's because they didn't think they had a chance in hell of getting Harrison, or if they genuinely thought that Neighbors was the best of this group. Some people did, so that's a possibility. We'll probably never know the answer to that, at least for a few years, until dust settles and everybody's retired and they talk about things after the fact, As far as the combine notes there, so Neighbors comes in the interview. He's asked about how he deals with losing, and he says he hates losing more than winning. Now, that's a little cliche, but you could tell that he definitely meant that. You could tell that he's the kind of guy that if the Giants go on a losing streak, well, let's be honest, that's what they've done a decent amount of time here the last few years. I'm not saying he's going to be a distraction, but he's not going to stay quiet about it. He's not going to be a guy that's going to take losing without an issue. Like, I do think he's a guy who's going to be a little vocal about it. And whether it gets vocalized in a positive way that helps the team or a negative way, we're going to find out. It's hard to say. He only won really in college. LSU had a pretty good year last year, obviously. We don't have that experience to see as far as that. He's then asked about how he handles not being involved early in the game. And again, this is way I want to word this carefully, especially because this is the guy we took. I'm worried people are going to kind of take this the wrong way. But he definitely paused to think about his answer. Like there's a technique that people do. I shouldn't even say technique. It's a reaction people do when they want to think about how they should word something. That they'll just repeat the question or start to repeat the question so they can mentally process what they should say before they actually say it. And it's something a lot of people do automatically. And I think that's what he did, because he started repeating the question. But then he says he handles it pretty tough. He admitted that point blank. I actually like that because I felt like it was honest that he's going to take it pretty tough. But it's also him kind of acknowledging that, hey, this is something I probably need to work on. And the Giants didn't seem to have issue. Dable said it's fine with that because he wants dogs with that competitive juice. Like, he was okay with it. Like, this is a guy who wants to win. He wants to be part of why the team wins. And they seem okay with that, the Giants. They really did. They didn't seem to have an issue with that, which I don't think you should. Like, competitive guys are the guys who tend to do the best.
100%.
They drive themselves, and they're pissed off when they don't.
Competitive guys are going to be the ones that are going to put the extra work in to make sure that they're at the top tier of the talent where they got to be, or the physical attributes where they could be. They're going to make sure that they're the ones in shape. They're the ones that are going to put in the extra work and actually drive the guys around them to put extra work in. Like, it's not a bad thing. Yes. And just to piggyback off what you said, like, he did pause. He repeated himself. Like, some people, like we alluded to earlier, like, in sales, you repeat yourself when you're trying to stall for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, or just how to put it into one word. Some people just kind of hesitate, just kind of look to the left, look to the right, just kind of, and just put it together. Like,
to the left, to the left.
It's not necessarily like a bad thing how you're putting it together. It's like he's trying to process how to put his emotions and thoughts into a word.
But it makes you wonder, what would he have said if he didn't pause?
Yeah. I hate it.
Wonder, because that's what he said when he had more time. I would have liked to hear the gut reaction. I would have liked to hear the instantaneous. I would have loved to see that, but just not going to happen, obviously. And you know what? He shouldn't do that. He should think about it if he's going to say the wrong thing at that point. It's an interview. It's a job interview. That's what that is. So take it seriously for what it is, and he clearly did. If he didn't care about what people thought about him, if he didn't actually care about the answers he gave, didn't want to be a Giant, he would have just said whatever the hell he wanted. Yeah,
and also at the end of the day, like, let's look at what he puts on Twitter. I mean, granted, it's ways from this process here, but like,
well, this week is putting up strip clubs, but again, he's a kid being a kid, guys. Who cares?
Yeah.
Let him have fun. Let him have fun.
All I know is he doesn't like yachts.
He doesn't like yachts. No more boat trips for the receivers.
Yeah.
It was interesting because, again, obviously we know Neighbors is who the Giants picked, but there was a little discussion afterwards about Neighbors, and he was the only one they really discussed after the interviews too much. They said that Neighbors was actually reserved and less edgy than they expected. Brandon Brown talked, kind of showed a desire to get more info and spend more time with him. He said he gives us something we don't have. He says, and that's, I think they understand the specialness of what Neighbors has the potential to be. We've talked about this all, leading up to the draft, all post-draft. Like, Neighbors has the highest ceiling, in our opinion, of all the receivers that were in this draft. The safe pick was Marvin Harrison Jr. Make no mistake about it. But Neighbors had the highest ceiling. So, it's a boom or bust kind of pick potentially, because I think if he fails, he's going to explode a little bit personally. But I think if he succeeds, he's going to become a star in this league. And I honestly think that's what's going to happen. I really think this is a pick the Giants can look at in the future and go, we got this one right.
Yeah.
We got this one right. We'll see. I've been wrong before, and I'm not trying to say I'm 100%, but Brown did say also that a quarterback will have to deal with him, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, they're admitting, like, he's going to be potentially a little bit of somebody you have to deal with, not like the guy who's the team guy who just does whatever you need him to do, and that's it. Not that he'll complain about the role, but he will complain if he's not utilized enough. We already know that. Then Shane says that Dable loves him. Dable's watched all that. Shane said, that DJ's looked at all the film and stuff like that and loves him. So I thought that was kind of interesting. They threw that in there because they didn't say, hey, we talked to some of the quarterbacks we're looking at this year, the draft and whatever, and they loved him. DJ is what they said. So makes you wonder how much they're actually looking at a quarterback, considering. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know.
I mean, also, once again, this is an edited episode where they take into the best sounding clips for what's going to come up to this league and to this season. But it's the only time they talked about any player that on offense that DJ loves thus far.
Yes. And I think part of that probably is because all the rumors that Neighbors wasn't really a fan of Jones, to be honest, based on some of the comments he made leading up to the draft and at that combine. Even if I remember right, that was when he made the comments about. Of course, the Giants want to get me the ball. Of course, I want to get a quarterback.
Yeah.
And that definitely gave us a little pause with him. But again, wasn't the end all. It was hey, I want to keep an eye on this guy and see what's going on. Is this a once-off mistake, or was it a cause for bigger alarm? And so far, it's been a once-off mistake.
Yeah. Listen, we all have friends out there that say dumb things here and there.
No.
I have a lot of those friends. I may be one of those friends. You also may be one of those friends.
I don't have any of those friends. But yeah,
people say things out of just excitement or just thrill, and not meaning what they say. They're just kind of like, oh yeah, of course you want the best guy to throw me the ball because I'm the best guy out there. Not thinking about it. Oh yeah, I may be drafted to this team that has a guy that's ranked in the top 20.
Maybe he should have paused and repeated the question before answering. The quote of the night.
I'll do that in the interview process.
The quote of the night was Brandon Brown talking about Neighbors, and he said, "Name me a dominant player at that position that was a choir boy. Neighbors gives us something we simply don't have."
Yeah,
I thought that was interesting. Like, I feel like the Giants are acknowledging that there may be some personality quirks to deal with, which is weird because it's being thrown out there publicly. We've now drafted him, and Neighbors obviously is going to watch this as well, probably. So it's like Neighbors understands the Giants are acknowledging he might be a personality issue at times. But it's interesting that they're saying that, and they're not wrong. I mean, historically, wide receivers that are great, at least, are the biggest head cases you'll come across. The Randy Mosses, the T.O.s, you can even go to the 90s,
quarterback.
Michael Irvin. There's, even look at some of the guys now, like Tyreek Hill. Would you really say he's the Boy Scout you want on your team?
Antonio Brown.
Antonio Brown. Well, Antonio Brown's probably a CTE case. Let's be honest here. Yeah. He didn't start off crazy. But how we know exactly. Mike Tomlin was very good.
I was about to say Pittsburgh could have a really good PR person.
The best coaching job that Mike Tomlin ever did. That's saying a lot. But yeah, I mean that's like I said, it's kind of interesting there. Let's pay the bills real quick, Rob. Now let's get into the rest of the news we got here because we got another 3 or 4 topics to go, I think, here. So let's pay those bills.
Enjoying the show? Looking for more goofball action? Consider a membership at buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs. Memberships start at just $5 and give you additional goofball access. One-time support payments also available starting at just $3. buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. So let's get into the comments here real quick before we break out the rest of the topics here. Joe Tisdale, what's up, Joe? Says, Dave's is the man. Really good vibe between Dave, Shane, and the rest of the NYG staff. I don't care what anyone says. Year 100 is going to be special. # book it. Yeah, I really do hope so. That's for sure. And then Joe gets mean about me. Joe says, I'm still noticing Drew says that point or that point there as much as DJ and Bobby O say, still a lawyer listener, G-Fams, this year's going to be epic. We all have the things we say. The fact that it's pointed out means I'm probably
that
saying
point right there.
Yeah. At that point, this point, that point, there's so many points. It's a very poignant conversation. Deb says speculation on trading up is that picking a quarterback 3 was a smokescreen. They would have picked Alt at 3. I don't think so still. I've heard that as well.
No.
Honestly, I don't think so. I think if they picked 3, they were picking the quarterback. They would have had him, sit behind DJ for a year and would have moved on next year, barring anything crazy by DJ.
Yeah. I mean, they kind of even said something about with DJ's ACL, like, do we draft the quarterback for the first to go to free market for the first 3 games of the year? Like, what are we doing here? So, like, they're going to move up
ahead of schedule to what they expected at this point in the offseason.
Yeah. So if They're moving up. They're moving up for the franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
Or
Danny Rivera says, Drew Robb, what up, fellas? How are we feeling about that phone conversation with Joe Schoen and Saquon on Hard Knocks last night? Saquon sounded like he had already made his mind up in that phone conversation. We're going to get that in a little bit there. We're going to have the Saquon is the last segment we got there. So I don't want to spill the beans too much there. He says, Chicago's media is also spicy at times, LOL. Exactly.
Super spicy. They got the diva dish.
Oh, no, they don't do the deep dish. That's Detroit. That's a fallacy. I'm telling you. That's the pizza for tourists. Chicago's had the thin crust, actually. I'm telling you.
Oh, so they're super spicy out there.
Yeah, that's how
pizza.
They created a pizza that they don't even eat themselves just to keep the tourists out of their pizzerias. That's how crazy it is. Danny also says that's so true. I think he was talking about that comment was when Caleb Williams were talking about him not wanting to be really in the room, kind of there as if he was kind of forced to. He says, yeah, that meeting with Caleb made no sense at all. And he said, did that Malik Neighbors in the strip club video bother you guys at all? I thought nothing of it. It wasn't a big deal to me, but I know some Giant fans are already raising their eyebrows. You know, I think the issue really comes to the B is the fact that it's a wide receiver, and wide receivers have issues and are known for being kind of issues. Listen, if the worst thing he does is throw some money and make it rain at a strip club, I'm good.
Yeah, listen, he did nothing inappropriate at the strip club. He threw his money that he earned.
Yes.
Being number 6 overall in the draft.
It was a scholarship fund.
Yes, at some booty as a scholarship fund.
Not to confuse with a draft prospect booty.
I mean, let's be real. I mean, you got Vegas, LA, and New York. They're probably the best 3. So if you're going to draft it and you're 6 overall.
Strip clubs or?
I have to imagine.
Tampa, we're kind of known in Tampa for the strip clubs.
Oh, you're getting jealous of New York strip club market?
No, I'm telling you.
You get the Blue Sapphire?
Listen, we have 2001 Space Odyssey, okay? That is legitimately a name of a strip club in Tampa. And it's also it literally has a VIP room that is shaped like a space flying saucer and everything. Like, I'm not even kidding, too. Google is hilarious.
I was going to say a fly rocket.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, I don't care. I really don't. I think people, like I said, it's just people are concerned. It's the offseason, not a lot to talk about. So therefore, they're reading between the tea leaves that aren't even there. Like, he's 20. He's got money he's never had in his life. He's going to be stupid with it. That's what they all do.
At the end of the day, if it's week 5, we won 5 straight games. He goes to a strip club. No one says anything like they're saying right now because he just got drafted. Yep. He celebrated. He won 5 straight games. Yep. Great job. Right now, we have nothing to talk about. It's off season, and he's a young kid that's going to do what everyone does. Listen, anyone that's 21 that didn't go to a strip club when you're a guy, or 18, whatever it is, you go find a juice bar. They didn't go. Like, come on.
Yeah. And listen, all the NFL players, by the way, guys, are having their fun and living it up. Whether it's guys that are a little older and are enjoying time with their family this time of the year, or it's younger guys going out and doing stupid things like this, they all are. I'm not going to drop any names because I don't like to talk about people on here that I haven't talked to and given permission to talk about, if that makes sense. But I actually talked to somebody today who is on the Buffalo Bills. And we were talking, and he was talking about that too. He was like, listen, I'm just trying to get some, basically trying to get some family time and enjoying it while you can. Because people don't realize, they think like these guys are like teachers and they get months off. No, they don't. I'm knocking teachers too. It's a rough job too. I wouldn't want to do that. But,
but teachers get 2 months off of the year. Like, everyone's like, oh, you get the summers off. Whoa, like, okay.
But I know. But what I'm saying is people think that the NFL players, like the second the season's over, they stop playing. And then all of a sudden it doesn't start again until training camp in July. Like, there's mini camps, there's OTAs, there's mandatory workouts, there's media events they have to go to, there's different public appearances they have to do. There's all these things they have to do. Like,
they get about a month and a half off.
Yeah. And keep in mind, when we say month and a half off, their work schedule is not like ours.
No.
Like, they don't get 2 days off a week like we do. They might get 1 during the season. And to be honest, the guys who are dedicated, they may get it off from the team, but they have their own private workouts and stuff they're doing at that point there, where it's more like a half day.
Yeah.
Like, this is, and people got to realize that they're going to cut loose when they can, especially guys that were college at that point because they're younger and they've had a lot more extra free time. So, have fun. They're right now, they're going around living it up wherever they live during the off season, enjoying life, spending time with the family, time with friends, stuff like that. That's what he does in his spare time, and that's what calms him down. And everybody's a consenting adult. Who cares? Now, if he beats up a stripper,
Cream hunts or Ray Riser girl,
now we're going to have an issue. Now we're going to have an issue. And I'm not suggesting he would. Don't read me wrong when I say that. But I'm saying that's the kind of thing that would throw up a flag for me. Him just going to the strip club and dropping thousands of dollars, and I get that's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but that's the equivalent of you and I opening up a roll of quarters and throwing it on stage.
I was about to say, well, with his 6th overall draft pick status, what's he making this year?
Oh, I had to look it up, but I mean, it's still millions of dollars either way. So I'm saying it's nothing.
Yeah.
He lost is nothing. So, all right, let's get back to the show, though. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah.
We got a couple more things to talk about here. So, there was a kind of assortment of news that popped up during the combine talk that, to be very frank, I didn't know what to call this segment. So we're just calling it Other Combine Notes. Very creative here. One thing, Jerome Henderson is shown in the field having a conversation with Drew Phillips, who obviously we ended up drafting in the 3rd round. I thought that was kind of interesting that they were already talking at that point there. And it was banter, as if the two had a relationship already. I thought that was kind of interesting to see. Now, obviously, Phillips had done some of the All-Star games, the Senior Bowl and that kind of stuff there. So obviously they've met there. The Senior Bowl, Jerome Henderson was basically like the acting defensive coordinator for the team at that point. So he got to talk to a lot of the players and work them out and do things with them and stuff like that. So it just makes you think that basically we're talking that they've talked before, not just once, but maybe a couple times. And Jerome Henderson might have been a big fan of Phillips, which makes me feel better about the pick, to be honest. Definitely did. They showed Phillips catching the ball during the combine or running with it later on. And Henderson said he looked good at the Senior Bowl too. So Henderson, obviously, at least based on the narrative they're feeding us during this Hard Knocks, was a fan of Phillips. And it makes sense. Exactly. Why would they draft somebody that the passing game defensive coordinator, whatever the hell title they gave him, along with being the defensive backs coach, obviously needs to like the guys they draft to be defensive backs. It'd be kind of stupid to give him guys he doesn't like. So the big one everybody's talking about is the fact that Joe Schoen, at one point during the combine, says he's going to go over to talk to the Patriots to tell them not to make any moves without talking to him beforehand. And that's exactly what he did. He walked over, and went ahead and spoke to them and basically said just that, like, hey, we're at 3. We're at 6. You guys are at 3. If you're going to make this move, don't make it without talking to us, please. He's talking directly to Elliot Wolf, who is the GM of the Patriots since Belichick is gone. So, he was talking to the top guy as far as that. It was the two of them just hobnobbing it up about that. And
I mean, it was very soft play too. Like,
it was soft play, but I kind of like the vibe I got was the Giants thought that if anybody was going to pass up on one of the big 3, it would be the Patriots.
Yes, you're not wrong. But when he went over to the locker room, it wasn't like, hey, talk to us before your picks. Like, if you're going to trade down, if you're looking to trade down, like, please skip us on. Like, I'm not saying you have to, but if you're not sold on that 3 pick, and you want to make moves, then please.
And Wolf talked about the fact that other teams approached him with the same conversation as well. So that was definitely a move that everybody kind of thought might potentially happen. Not that they thought it would happen, but they thought that it was a potential to happen. One bit of notes that I have to give, and it wasn't even mentioned on the show. This was my eyes catching things because I'm old and I remember this guy very well. I thought it was nice to see Jesse Armstead in the interview rooms. And they didn't show him when they were talking to the players individually, but when they were showing, signs of video clips of people in the room and people coming in and out and stuff like that, you clearly saw Jesse Armstead in there. So just a nice thing for those people that are old like me and remember him watching him play as a linebacker as the Giants, and he's just an amazing player. And, I think unless you're in your late 30s to early 40s, you probably don't remember him. I think that's the age you got to be probably to know him, because I was a kid when he played, but he was a damn good linebacker. I'm always happy to see guys like him still involved with this organization. Remember we used to see Charles Way on the sidelines occasionally too. I don't know if he's still with the team or not too as well, but in some way, shape, or form, capacity wise. But I like seeing the guys that I grew up watching and idolizing as a kid still be with the franchise here now that I'm old.
You're so old.
I'm old. The other one, notes wise, we got to give is the fact that I thought it was just a funny comparison when assistant GM Brandon Brown compared the interviews to speed dating. I thought that was a funny comparison because it's not wrong.
As was like, he's not wrong.
He's really not. Like, I don't know, it's kind of like you get that a couple minutes with him and it's like ding next. Like that's what exactly what happened. I thought it was a very appropriate way of talking about it there. And then the other big bit of notes there as far as what happened at the combine is Brandon Brown and Joe Schoen talking about the Burns or Wilkins. Christian Wilkins they said was projected to probably get about $22 million a year. Schoen mentions talking to Dan Morgan, saying it was would take a one. He was wondering about maybe 2 2s. Said that he would probably cost him $29 million. And then he talks to Shane Bowen, who's also at the combine there, and Dable about him, and makes the joke that if they got Brian Burns, that he could play corner with that kind of pass rush, basically. So you could tell that that's who they wanted. But Wilkins was definitely the backup plan. He was definitely the backup plan overall to, hey, if we can't make this move, we'll get Wilkins and really tie him up with Dexter Lawrence, and that would just be, an amazing duo at that point there. Obviously he went to, Clemson with Dexter Lawrence as well. So the two we talked about in the last one, they have a pretty good, relationship overall. And I'd be careful with my wording here. I can confirm they definitely have a very close relationship from things I've been told.
Oh,
yes. So, I mean, Dexter Lawrence is one of those guys everybody loves. Everybody loves him. He's. I hate to give people things out that I'm told that I don't have permission to necessarily say, but I can just say that everybody I ever talked to, we've said it on the program before. Again, I don't like to give out sources without talking to sources before, because that's when people stop talking to you and telling you things. And I'm not the guy that has 10,000 sources. So when somebody gives me information, I don't want to give out names.
Don't ruin it. Don't spoil it.
Exactly. But I can tell you, everybody that I've ever talked to that played with him or knows him has said nothing but good things about him. In fact, one of them called him a big cuddly teddy bear, Dexter Lawrence. And honestly, from everything we know of him, that's probably appropriate. It probably is exactly what he's like. That's the personality vibe I get of him. So, yeah, Wilkins would have been a nice addition, but he was definitely the backup plan in this whole scenario. And they definitely wanted Brian Burns. Like, that was the A option. Wilkins was the B. And they got their A. So we're going to find out more about that probably in the next Hard Knocks, because at this point we're still at the combine. The trade has been made. We're still talking about much higher returns for Burns than what the Panthers ended up getting. So we'll find out how that all went down there. So let's talk about one of the most entertaining, humorous interactions in this entire episode here. And that's all the stuff that went down with the 40 times, because, yeah, there was a lot of craziness going on there. And again, I hate to repeat this and beat this dead horse, but I'm going to say it. Again, the Giants knew cameras were on them. But this coaching staff seemed to have a lot of fun with each other, really. And it definitely showed, especially during this 40-time bit there. So Sam Hartman, remember we talked about him last episode, because Joe Shane's grandmother, who was apparently, was she 90-something or whatever, living in South Bend, talking about how cool he was. It'd be nice if Joe Schoen gave her a little introduction. I'm just saying. But he was talked about again because he was the only quarterback that ran the 40 at the combine. And Dable made the comment that he was like Uncle Jesse from Full House, which he's not wrong. He's not wrong, actually.
I think the what was it? Brown said it first, and then like, oh, he looks like the guy from Full House, and yeah, Dable turned around like, Uncle Jesse.
Carmine
left.
Carmen Brasillos asked if he could run a 40 under 7. He says flat out no. Dable then says he could run under 7 with the plate full of wings at the end. Hence why I've been saying plate full of wings for him all episode long. No one believed he could. No one at all. I'm telling you right now, I wish I knew someone in Giants media well enough. And I have someone in mind that I might text about this later on that I know is accredited with the New York Giants. And I feel like I'm name dropping. I'm not trying to name drop on purpose. I'm not even name dropping. I'm just like brag dropping, I guess, to a certain degree in this episode. I'm not trying to be that guy.
Totally that guy right now.
I totally am being that guy. I'm not trying to be. We've just been doing this for a couple of years, so we just happen to have some people's cell phones in the media and all. But I would love it if somebody next time challenged him publicly to doing a 40-yard dash at do it at training camp and give him a plate full of wings at the end if he does it under 7. Like, I think that'd be the funnest thing ever. I really do.
Brian Dibble, if you are listening, I'll chat you to the 40 for those wings.
Like, I'm telling you, like, you know what it reminded me of? Like, you know, like when John Boy Media does their own combine and Justin Pennick always does the his 40 dash. It isn't as a joke, obviously. Like, Justin is he's a nice guy, but he's not the guy who's going to win a lot of races. I'll put it that way. Like, but it kind of reminded me of that. He'd be like sitting there like, ah. But like, I really want to see this. I really want to see this. So like I said, I may have to text somebody about this later because I don't know why I didn't think about that earlier. But yeah, somebody at the media needs to, the second training camp opens up, offers them to do it publicly during training camp. I think it'd be hilarious. And I think that should be a good bonding moment for the team as well. I think the team as a whole would get a kick out of it. I really do. Kind of like, you know, when they were talked about, I hate to bring up this guy, but Joe Judge, when they had the mud fight at one of the training camps. And it was kind of like a let loose moment. Like, I think if we get that kind of moment for him, it can help the team get together. We got to, of course, talk about, if we're going to talk about the 40 times, we got to talk about the big one being Xavier Worthy, who, of course, broke the record at the combine there. I think we can say without saying spoiler alert because, you know, it happened months ago. And, you know, I don't follow the underwear Olympics like some people. I admit that freely. Like, I really don't, because it's to me, again, we've talked about it during the season. I'll say it again. To me, the underwear Olympics, the combine, should solidify some of your opinions. It should never change your opinion. Game film and interviews should be the whole process, not what 40 time they have, not how high they jumped, because you can see all on that in film what game speed is for them. And game speed is different than regular speed for some people. It just is life. But yeah, so he ran it the first time and got a 4.25. The record was 4.22 by ex-Giant John Ross. You guys may remember him from his 1 year he had with us there. There was talks like, will he rerun this again? Will he do it again? You know, some people do it a second time, some people don't. He went for it. And he got that 4.21. Initially, the unofficial time was 4.22. He tied with John Ross, but the official time was 4.21. I just thought that, listen, if I was somebody who was interested in a late first round pick, early second round pick wide receiver, that would have impressed me a lot, because he didn't have to go ahead and, you know, do that second run. He wanted it. He wanted the record, you know? And now this year, he'll be a Kansas City Chief now, playing with the best quarterback in all of football. And listen, if that's the kind of guy he is, those two are going to get along very well.
Yep.
You know, but again, same as we said with Jalen Hyatt last year, speed is not everything. It's a key part. It's a fun part, but it's not everything. So we'll see what he does. It does make him a great Pro Bowl kind of caliber receiver this league. But
no, but when
nice
you get drafted,
break.
and when you get drafted by one of the best head coaches, with one of the best quarterbacks that walked on the field, like, it's also not a rough thing for him.
Exactly. But yeah, Joe Schoen then at the end of that makes the joke about asking if he's going to play at 6 now. So I thought that was kind of fun. Like I said, you do see some of their personality on this thing. It's kind of a little fun there. But he does say at that point that realistically somebody would take him probably in the first because of that. And of course, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. I just like that at the end where Dale was like, come on, realistic, guys. Like, if I have to run a 7, if I have to beat him, where do I have to start? And they're like, the 35. For a shot.
Like I said, it was fun to see those guys interacting like that there, especially Brasillo, because we don't know anything about Brasillo yet. We don't, he's brand new to the team, and he was kind of right in the middle of it with them. So it was nice to watch. I did like that. Let's get into the part that probably gets the most press, but to be honest, the part that's boring the hell out of us now at this point.
So let's get to
it's getting dragged on and dragged on and dragged on. It's over, guys. And that's, of course, the Saquon Barkley saga. Oh, yes, the Saquon Barkley saga. And there's Joe Schoen looking a little nervous and not so cool, looking at the cell phone there, making calls he didn't want to make. During the combine, Shane talked about it a little bit, and you kind of got the vibe that Shane knew that Saquon was going to get more money elsewhere, but he wanted his pitch to include things like, hey, play a few more years for the Giants, build the legacy there. Maybe you'll be in the Ring of Honor eventually. We heard that kind of talk during this as well, the offseason. That kind of stuff came out as well. And that would be part of their pitch. At the very end of the show, though, is where we really got the Saquon news. So Joe Schoen is sitting there talking to Saquon's agent. He says he doesn't want him to be disrespected by any offers, so the Giants will let him test the market. He says if Saquon wants to come back and be a Giant, he wants him to have a conversation once he gets the chance to test the market. He then calls Saquon. He awkwardly, I'll put it this way myself. This is nobody else but me saying this. Rob, you can agree or disagree. We didn't talk about this beforehand. He awkwardly shoots the breeze for a moment. And it was the most awkward shooting of the breeze conversation I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
It really was. Like, hey, how's it going? Are you in Jersey? Like, what? Like, for those who didn't watch the episode yet, and I hope you watched the episode before you watch this.
Especially after an hour and 32 minutes into this.
Seriously. Spoiler alert. But it's like, it's definitely, it was definitely an awkward conversation. Like, this was the conversation you have with the guy that you work with that you don't really like and you don't really want to talk to him on a regular basis, but you kind of have to have somewhat of a relationship with. And that's not to say that Shane doesn't like him personally, but we've gotten the vibe this whole show so far that Shane didn't want to keep Saquon. And you could tell by the way this conversation went that Barkley and his people probably knew that as well. That's kind of the vibe that I got. Like, they kind of knew where this was headed from the get-go.
I wouldn't. The only rebuttal I would say against that is not so much they knew that the Giants didn't want to keep them, that they just knew the Giants weren't going to pay them, which is a different statement. They're saying that they didn't want.
Yeah, like if they could have got him at $6-7 million a year, they would have kept him all day long.
Yeah.
But they weren't going to pay him 12-13. Weren't going to do it. But yeah, so he basically just tells Barkley, what he told his agent. He asked for him for his word on circling back to the Giants, which was interesting. I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, he point blank asked him, like, will you give me your word you'll come back to us with any offers, basically. Like, I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the exact verbiage he used there, but it's basically, what he said. And Saquon assured him that the Giants is where he wants to be, but he never really gave him his word. Is the weird part. So there's been some alluding to the fact that trailers have kind of made it seem as if maybe Saquon didn't come back. I don't know if he did or didn't. We're going to find out. We know the Giants never gave him an official offer. That's been confirmed. But we don't know if he ever really came back to the Giants with the offer. So, we'll probably find it out next week on. But
as the Hard Knocks turns.
Seriously, it's like they're just dragging the story out, guys. They're just dragging it. It's almost like HBO and the Max people kind of think that this is the highlight for most people, so they got to drag it out and drag it out and drag it out there. So that's what they're doing. This is more dragons than the Game of Thrones here. It's just getting bad. So hopefully next week brings an end to that saga. And we can get into fun things. Get into the Brian Burns trade getting done. Let's get into the free agency. Let's get into that kind of fun stuff there. That's the stuff I want to see. I don't want to keep dwelling on people that are gone. It's like I say at work all the time when someone leaves. We don't speak ill of the dead. They're gone.
He's gone. See you later. Bye.
So, all right, guys. That's going to call it a night here for us. So, we'll do this, like I said, for all the episodes. I think there's five or six they said they were going to do at that point. So we had a couple more weeks of these. We'll start doing every Wednesday night as long as that's still going. We'll of course be live again tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter /X, Twitch, and of course Rob's favorite, my LinkedIn profile. Oh yes, everyone loves my LinkedIn profile. Got like 10,000 people on it. It's insanity. I just friended everybody at one point in my life because nobody knows what the hell to do on LinkedIn anyway. So, but yeah, so of course we're always available the next day on all the audio podcast platforms as well. Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, whatever one Google's using now because they keep changing their mind every other week what they want to do a podcast. But all the big ones there, we're on them. If you don't find us, that just means you're on the wrong platform. So switch platforms. Like, subscribe, share to a friend. That's
ring that bell.
Going at that point, guys. Appreciate you guys for that. And yeah, ring the bell, hit the like, especially on YouTube. That's what we're really asking right now. We try not to be the people that beg our listeners to do things there, but we're going to, in this case, beg if you can.
Yeah,
have
please,
already.
Please.
Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. We're at the point now where monetization is around the bend here. So we like that. Monetization is nice. Like anything with the word monetize at the beginning. Like Monet. We're big fans of Monet's work. Those lilies.
Monet.
All right, guys. We'll see you guys again tomorrow night. As far as the topic goes, if you're asking, if you're looking to wonder where that's going to be, we don't know yet, to be very frank. It depends on what happens in the football world. It may just be more Giants news, and maybe we do another look back on the draft.
The
next one's JPP, so that'll be a fun one to do.
Oh, do you know me?
Yeah. Who are you again?
Not JPP.
All right, guys. We'll see you guys again tomorrow night. Appreciate you guys listening as always. And as always, Giant fans.
Go Thanks for listening to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. We appreciate your support.
Thanks so much.
Please, I'm begging you. Please subscribe.